nightmare. Signs of the time are on cardboard on corners in town, like a cancer that's silently spreading. There's an unspoken fear we're on our way down. We must take America back, Main Street to Wall Street, cities and states, Washington, D.C. Before it's too late, there's not long. We need leaders who lead us, not stick us and bleed us, then ransom our future and our children's, that's wrong. We must take America back as liberty weeps, our forefathers spin in their graves. Pray God will bless some way out of this mess. We must take America back. Lord knows they'll try to silence our voices. They'll pretend to be patriots, fighting for fairness for all, but they're not even fit to hold office. And what they believe doesn't fit with freedom at all. We must take America back, Main Street to Wall Street, cities and states, Washington, D.C. Before it's too late, there's not long.
This is the National Intel Report. I'm your host, John Stadtmiller. I have Bob on the line with us. Hello, Mr. Chapman.
Good afternoon, my son.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Well, we've got a couple minutes in this segment. I've been promising to tell this story to the listeners since last Friday, and I held off until today from some advice for some friends that said, you know, this is better suited for Mr. Chapman on Tuesday. Last week, and how I'm going to do this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to protect the source on this information. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I was promised more information if and when it became available. And I'm not going to identify who it is or what major banking cartel they work for. I'm not even going to give you the day in which I learned this. I'll just say one day last week. Because the detail, I don't want to give out too much detail. I don't want people finding out who this guy was. You know, it might sound kind of screwy to say that somebody is a patriot and still works for the banking system. Everybody in this audience knows somebody that works at the banks somewhere, either as a teller or a manager or whatever. It's just been how we've been doing business for the past 100 years. This chance encounter with an individual, I just got my motorcycle out of the shop, a little flop that the insurance company had to pay out $6,000 for. Bless them. Thank you, Progressive. But the gentleman, as I was sitting at a refueling stop, commented on my motorcycle. Struck up a conversation with the man. And he was driving a rental car. Well, the likes I've never seen. It was a model that was made in Europe, not introduced in the United States. That's how the conversation started. And then we went into the economy about the big three, the automakers, Ford, Chrysler, General Motors. And I said, Henry Ford was one of those guys that understood almost 100 years ago. As a matter of fact, he wrote about it in a 4-volume set coming out of his Dearborn Independent about the international bankster gangsters. It was that important, those volumes of that information that he knew, and he had some pretty interesting friends. Burroughs, the naturalist, Thomas Edison, Harvey Firestone, and the likes. He kept some pretty interesting company. And I said, this man knew what the international banks were going to do to this country He wrote a series of editorials just literally 6-7 years after the Federal Reserve Act took place in America. And I said Ford didn't even need to borrow any money because they cleared their inventory off of the lots and out of the manufacturing sites. In other words, they kept everything close to the vest. This guy, he had a rent-a-car that I'd never seen before, and that's what started the conversation. I got to say that I've never had a conversation with an individual like this in my entire life. And I've talked to a lot of interesting people over the years. I said that looks like they're going to have to do a QE3. I said, rumor has it they're not going to call it QE3. The austerity programs are not working in Europe. And we'll talk about that today. I'm sure Bob has a lot of information on that. But I said they're stuck, aren't they? They have to do a QE3. All I got was a head nod. I said, my sources have told me that out of this housing bubble, which was created, the derivative bubble, of which they rolled over mortgages up to 20 times, commercial, residential, it didn't matter. If they could repackage it and resell it, that's what they did. I said, my sources have told me that this derivative bubble that they have created is between $1 and $1.4 quadrillion. Again, I got the nod. He then said something to me that just knocked me off my feet. He told me that their Harvard MBA grads are arguing whether the plug will be pulled on the economy in September or October. He said, I can tell you this, nobody's going to be doing any business come December. Now, there were other parts of that conversation that took place, but those are the high points of the conversation. And like I said, I've never had a conversation with an individual, let alone a stranger. I took note, first sized the guy up, had expensive clothes on, minus his suit top, tie was off, white shirt, dress pants, expensive shoes. I knew this guy, with what he was driving, it had to have been a rental car, and it was. But he was down from New York, doing some consulting here in Austin. When I had this conversation with this man, you can tell a lot about a person's eyes, their mannerisms, their speech pattern. You can tell a lot. I've never had a conversation like this in my life because he took me seriously and I took him seriously. I told him what I did and I gave him a card. I said I would urge you to continue listening to this network. And he said, I will contact you. I said, I will protect you as a source. I will protect you as a source. I'm not even going to mention what bank this is. I'm not going to give a whole lot of detail other than what I just gave to you, the listening audience. But I took this to be very, very serious, Bob. Very serious.
Well, I think what he has told you is that it is their feeling among, I guess, his associates or friends in New York City at this firm that he belongs to, that they're not going to go to QE3, they're going to pull the plug.
No, they're going to do the QE3 because that was one question I had. I said the QE3 or the QE2 is up next month. I said they have to do a QE3, do they not? I said rumor has it they're going to try to call it something else. I said but they have committed themselves to monetizing the debt. He said yes. So there will be a quantitative easing of some sort under some sort of name. But here is, Bob, what I've deduced out of this. That a lot of people are starting to catch on as to how big the actual fraud, not only perpetrated on the American people through the American banking system, but on the banking systems worldwide. They know that the information is out there. It's been floating around. It has not hit mainstream, nor will mainstream. When was the last damn time they told us the truth? But they are scared. This individual that I spoke to, Bob, he was at ease with himself. He was not, as I would describe, as being scared, confident in his knowledge. And the other thing that I'm looking at here is when this hyperinflation kicks in, and folks, we went through bailouts, we went through QE1, QE2, what Europe is now and the euro is suffering under, what Spain, Portugal, now Italy, it is the result of their monetizing the debt to try to make this clunker go a few more miles. And they can't keep it up. Number one, the information is getting out there. People are getting wise to how big this fraud really is. So Bob, I don't expect whether that this is September or October or they change their mind and it's February 3rd of 2012. In my estimation, it's not going to make that much difference. It is what it is. This is not sustainable. They are just keeping people placated for the time being. Wall Street, the banks. We know the story. We've delivered the story to you and all the gory little details. Now, am I prepared to, and this is one of these instances, Bob, unless this guy was a polished agent, disinformation agent that sought me out, they did a pretty good damn job. But regardless of that, the system that has been set up, the way they've handled this, it is absolutely 100% doomed to failure. Not if, but when. Am I correct in that? Bob?
Well, I think that realization is there as we have talked about on this program, talk radio programs like this and the internet have the world breathing down their neck. I mean, you look at the demonstrations in Spain, some 15 days in a row. The unemployment for people in Spain between 18 and 35 is 35 to 40%. And they get out there and they said, this is not political. We just want a job. We want to be able to live. All you people do is lie to us. And the bankers behind this. So the kids know. These are the people, I guess, generally under 30. They're listening. And they know. And just like the situation as well in Greece. They get all this propaganda that they're going to sell off all of this stuff that Greece owns. Well, that's all well and good. But what they didn't tell you is that the other party is not going to go along with it. And I'm just writing a piece for Saturday about this right now, about all the players and who's trying to do what. And it all comes from knowledge. The people finding out the truth. And there's only been one news agency today, or yesterday, who carried the exclamation, Greece's main opposition leader bluntly refused on Monday to back new austerity measures designated to tackle the crippling debt crisis, arguing they would only bring further recession, despite the European Union's insistence of what they demanded. Now, AP was the only one that carried it. The only one. We get every news service. And I speak German and French and Spanish, and I read and write better than nowadays than I speak them, because I don't get a chance to speak them anymore. But anyway, this is an awakening. Now, what the gentleman who you met at a fuel stop, which I'm sure was not prearranged, they don't usually approach people at fuel stops. He told you the truth. But the question is, what is it that's going to happen? If they're going to institute QE3, it probably means that a number of things, perhaps.
No,
many municipalities going bankrupt.
No, systemic bank failure. Pull the plug.
Well, that would the key would come out of Europe.
And what's happening in Europe right now?
Well, the Greeks are saying, we ain't going to do that, in spite of what the media says. They're not going to do it. Give away everything they have to a bunch of bankers that caused this thing in the first place.
That's the irony of this whole situation. Bob, and take heart, people. And I'm telling you. I told this gentleman, I said, 20 years ago I was telling bankers, you will see the banking system fail within your lifetime. Of course, that was the rantings of a lunatic, was it not?
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely correct.
I was at a box store today taking care of a problem that I had with a product that I'd purchased. And there was a man behind the counter, just standing there, just observing, listening. He was an employee. He and I got to talking while the other guy's on the phone trying to resolve my problem. I was shocked and amazed of what the depth of this man and his knowledge. I said, where in the hell are you getting that information? How do you know these things? He knew about the banking. He knew about everything that I talk about on this program. I said, you listen to alternative media? He said, no, I don't. I said, well, you sure as hell didn't learn this on the mainstream media. How do you know these things? He said, I'm not a sleeping American. I know how to do research. So you folks out there that think that, being spoon-fed from the alternative media is the only awakening that has happened in this country, I got some real serious news for you. I was told just recently that the entire state Missouri legislature knows of the coming collapse. This is not being carried on mainstream media because they're too busy out there trying to pump as much as they can. By the way, Bob, I noticed here, dovetailing, I was told, by the way, even before Geithner made this announcement, that the government may have to dip into the 401ks. I had asked him specifically. I said, I hear that 401ks, retirement funds will be confiscated. Again, a nod in the affirmative. So I am telling you that from a source, right from the Big Apple, that had no reason to lie to me, didn't know me from Adam, told him what I did and what I was concerned about, and I threw everything at this man that I knew how to bring up in a conversation. You always know when you're talking to somebody that is legitimate, that is truly concerned. So here I am earlier today talking to an individual. He knew about the banking system. He knew a lot of what I've talked about over the years on this radio program. Folks, I'm telling you, the one flaw with this gentleman that I found was he went, well, what are we to do? There is no true leadership in this country right now. There is no true leadership in this country. There's a lot of people that know something is very, very wrong. They may not have the details. There are people on the inside, the ring knockers, the associates of the crime syndication, that have been forewarned. And it's going to be business as usual. Now, this is an instance, I started to say this, Mr. Chapman, this is one of these instances where I'm damned if I do, but I'm certainly damned if I do not. But I'm looking for verifiers, and I'm starting to see them. We all knew that this is going to happen one day. We've been talking to you about a total financial banking collapse, not just here in this country, but worldwide. And I'm sorry to report that this man had an encounter with a man that knew, and he verified our deepest fears. Now here's the question. What do we do about it? I made the suggestion that state banking might be a good interim step. He says, you're damn right. He said the Federal Reserve is poison. It will kill what's left of America. We'll be right back. Let's go to Lee in Georgia. Hello, Lee.
Gentlemen, how are you today?
Hi.
I'm outside. It's a little windy, so hopefully it's not distorting my sound too much. Very interesting discussion. I remember back in 2008 when the Argentine seizure of pensions first became a talking point, and I was talking about this then. And a number of people have asked me over the past few years, when's the system going to collapse? I always tell them the same thing. I can't tell you when, but I can tell you the warning signs, the things that you're going to need to watch for. And here I'm listening to you this morning, and you're talking about this fellow that told you what he did the other day when you were talking about your motorcycle and all that. And I'm hearing, now this guy's verifying, what many of us have suspected. But I told people these are the things we're watching for. When they start trying to monetize and privatize everything, if you see the United States start talking about doing what Argentina has done with the pension deals, if you hear any rumors about coming out about another round of quantitative easing and all these other things, if you see, and all of these different things I was pointing out, and now here we are, we're seeing all of these things that we've been talking about. And one of the big things I said was, when the Patriot Act comes set to expire, watch what they do with that. That will be a clear indication. And so now my question is very simple. When are we going to stop the running of the mouth and the whining and the crying and the complaining and start marching people? We've got to stop this now. I'm waiting on you to get up off your butts. Let's do this. Let's put an end to this. We can't keep going. And if we wait until the system actually collapses like this gentleman was telling you, I don't even know if at that point, I don't know if there's any hope for us.
What do you say after that, Bob?
Well, I think we found out in the last election it's very difficult to penetrate a paid-off Congress. And
boy, are they paid off.
So,
yeah.
God. Yeah.
And so the bottom line is it's going to go all the way to collapse and revolution. And that's what you're going to see in many countries. They push this thing in Greece, they'll have those people all over them. This guy, Samos, who's in the opposition party, he's a Harvard graduate, so he's no dummy. And he's a patriot, from what I can see. And he said, no, we're not going to do that. So, do the bankers going to want to go head-to-head with the entire population? I don't think so. Is the military? I don't think so. No. This could be a linchpin in Europe. And the debt in the United States, the Federal Reserve, in September, October could be the linchpin in America. I wrote last May, I said the second half of this coming year, everything's going upside down. And the price of gold and silver are going to go crazy. And I've been right, unfortunately, again and again and again. And that's where we're headed, and the gentleman's correct.
All right. Appreciate
Well, my thing is, and I agree with you 100%, but my thing is, I'm at the point right now where I really don't care what happens in Europe anymore. I don't care what happens in Asia anymore. I don't care what happens in the Middle East anymore. I don't care about Canada. I don't care about Mexico. I care about the 48, the lower 48, the upper one, and the lower one. That's what I care about. Anything beyond that doesn't matter. I don't care. They do what they want to do. We've got to stop this nightmare here. And if we don't do it, I told everybody, from the moment this goes down, we'll see within a year there's going to be complete collapse. And if we don't stop it before the collapse, I don't know, Bob, John, do you see see us being able to get out of it if we go into a full-blown collapse?
Let me add something here that was discussed with my source. I said to him, look, do you think these fusion centers, I said, you're right there in Austin. There's a fusion center. There are some 58 fusion centers. There's one in every state. Some have duplicates. I said to him, you know what these are for. This is not for Al-Qaeda. I said that was a CIA-run operation right from the get-go. Again, I got a nod. He said, look, he said, when the Boston Celtics win a damn championship and the fine folks start burning and looting and doing all that other stuff, and I looked at him and I stopped and I said, you mean the culturally and the economic disadvantaged in cities such as Detroit, Cleveland, L.A., so on and so forth? I said, that's what these centers are for the command and control of the police and anybody out there with a shiny badge and a gun that heretofore had authority within their own jurisdictions. They are now going to all be federalized. I'd also gotten another call from another source. They have seen with their own eyes the United States police force patches, not drawings or renderings, actual patches being made. This is serious because we know that this is not about Al-Qaeda. This is not about some innocuous, shadowy boogeyman that threatens the security of the United States. This is in place when martial law is declared because of a financial collapse. End of story. And I'm with you, Bob. Bob, I'm disappointed in the alternative media that they have their heads buried so far in a dark, dank, stinky place that they pick and choose their little agendas and their talking points. We're talking about something we have never seen in this country before. A total collapse with 300 million people, and there's a lot of them out there that don't even know what the hell country they live in or what language we speak. What do you think the response is going to be from them? You will see martial law in this country. No doubt.
You know, I agree with you, but I don't know how long it will last or how long it will be effective.
That's going to depend on how many friends we actually have with the shiny badges and the guns, and how many in the United States military that know what the hell's going on. Bob, I got these...
Well, most of them do know what's going on, let me tell you.
10 years ago, Bob, I was getting calls from full bird colonels. We were on shortwave. The signal was going around the planet. I was starting to get calls from command staff. I had a conversation with a one-star general. He says, what would you do? I said, are you asking me for career advice? I said, I'm not going to do that. I can only tell you what I would do if I were in your position. I'd keep my nose to the grindstone. I'd accept my status, being elevated in rank, whatever. I'd keep my head down, and I'd stay busy. But when the time comes that you know what your duty and obligation to this country, its people, and its form of law and its constitution, you're going to know what to do. I told him, just in case you don't, you take all of your men, material, everything you can lay your hands on, and you hit the road. Because there's going to be millions of us out here in this country that will stand for the law, stand for the Constitution. See, here's the thing. A lot of people, even educated people, understand what our Constitution is. But in their minds, they've been thinking like they're the bad people. Folks, quit walking around with your tail between your legs and your eyes cast down to the ground. Stand up. You're in the right. You have the law. This is a coup. This is an ultimate takeover and takedown of America. Are you going to stand with her? Are you going to stand and watch her wither and die? There's your bottom line. It's either a yes or a no. Let's take this break. We skipped the first break of the hour. To our affiliates, you can understand why I skipped it. I hope you stayed with me, but if you played the commercials, we understand. Thank you for your call, Lee. 800-313-9443. We'll keep rolling the calls, keep putting out the information, and I'm going to go like a damned Roman candle, burning it at both ends until the day we cannot.